Look, the NFL draft is all about that perfect match. So let's try to find a few of them on Forno Friday here on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you to my hashtag everydayers so much for hanging out each and every day here on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. It is Friday, and beginning a tradition we're going to try to keep up best we can. Up until the draft, we're going to have a little draft talk with my good buddy here, Tyler Fornes. Way more into the draft, way more into college football than I've ever been. So Tyler knows some names. And look, it's Valentine's Day. All right, it's a day for matchmaking. So Matchmaker, make me a match. I told Tyler before the show to come in with some, not necessarily, the top prospects, not necessarily all first round guys or whatever, but guys that are just particularly smooth fits with what the Minnesota Vikings do, whether it's offense or defense. So hello, Tyler. Happy Valentine's Day. Give me a match.
Oh man, there's so many really good matches, but I'm gonna start with one that really reminds me of Mekhi Blackmon, which is why I think the Vikings might want to pursue this. So the way they have drafted cornerbacks under Brian Flores, they've gone two routes. They've gone the Mekhi Blackmon route, feisty, I'm gonna punch you in the face, play a lot of man coverage, and then they went with Kyrie Jackson, big, athletic, long. I don't really know what Brian Flores' specific type is going to be with how he wants to run this, because last year was kind of a patchwork group. Byron Murphy was more of a slot guy that they were willing to play on the outside. But what is that type that Brian Flores has? I'm not really sure, but I do know that he loves guys who can just play football. And that's go ahead.
I actually I did this yesterday on Locked On Vikings, that exact question, like what's the type? I would argue Byron Murphy is more of an outside corner. He's just short and can play inside and has the agility to play inside, which you couldn't ask of like Shaq Griffin or Stephon Gilmore. So he had to be that guy. But to answer the question, the two things that I came out to be most important were reading route concepts properly, like having experience in like match zone coverages or man match coverages where you have to like get really good at looking at a route and being like, is that vertical or not? And like having that sort of instinct. And then the second thing was being able to trigger downhill, because we're going to play a lot of off coverage. So I said, you don't need the dude with a 4.240. And I said, you don't even need the guy with like a ton of length necessarily, because they have shown that they're totally okay trotting out a bunch of 5'11 corners and working with it. But yeah, my answer to that was more about trigger downhill and like tackle, because of how often and how much that defense wants to lure you into throwing like bubble screens. You need a corner who's good against that. And then being able to just like not screw up whether you've got the 2 or the 3 or whatever. If you have that ability, then I feel pretty good about you coming in and learning like the ins and outs of this scheme, which is just learning a playbook versus trying to like develop a new cognitive skill.
That's fair. Well, luckily the two guys I have for you are perfect for those two things. They are willing tacklers, they trigger well downhill, and they have a ton of experience, especially playing man coverage. So some of those man match principles, they're not going to be as well versed, but they play so much man on the outside that I think it's going to translate somewhat better than somebody who just plays zone. Quincy Riley out of Louisville and Kobe Bryant out of Kansas. These dudes are aggressive. They attack the football, and Riley's 196. You don't have to really worry about his size. Kobe Bryant was 171. And
not quite Emmanuel Forbes, but getting there.
No, Emmanuel Forbes played like he was 166. Kobe Bryant does not play like he's 171. He's a multi-year starter at Kansas. And nobody could bully him. He was punching you in the mouth. He was staying in the hip pocket. He attacked the football, and guys were not overpowering him. Strength was not an issue at 171. So when I see that number, it's like, man, but when you turn on the film, you don't see the issues there. You see a guy who's coming up, identifying screens, and willing to get in there dirty and tackling. I think he needs to get a little bit of play strength. If he can get to 180, I'm all in, because
Yeah,
he's going to get that play strength enough where though some potential missed tackles will not happen. And Riley's the same kind of way. Riley just needs to learn how to better fit the run because the effort is there. He just takes some bad angles at times, and that can lead to some bigger runs. But you can teach that. You can't teach a willingness to go and tackle, and both these guys have that.
The dog mentality thing. Like when it comes to a small corner, I feel like, whether like I think there comes a certain threshold where just playing in the NFL at 166 is like suicidal.
Yeah.
Like that just always felt a little weird, but that wasn't really what turned out to sink Emmanuel Forbes. He was also just not that good at corner. But like, I think like Cam Dantzler, it wasn't ever really about his size that ended up kind of burning him. There's just the bozo gene, right? But so I know you like Kobe Bryant a lot. You've talked about him a lot.
Quincy Riley might be my favorite prospect ever. Like, I love these guys.
Yeah, and so what's the draft stock on these guys, more or less? Like, what kind of range are we talking? Are these first round dudes?
No, probably mid to late day 2 is where both these guys will go.
Okay.
I gave Quincy Riley a fringe first round grade. I'm just obsessed. I love
and that's way higher than everybody else.
Yep.
And I was a flag you're planting.
Hey, I was way higher on Jarvis Brownlee Jr. than everybody, and we saw the game he had against Justin Jefferson. He was very good. And he played opposite of him and looked even better. Kobe Bryant, I have a very high 3. Like, these guys can just play football, and they're going to punch you in the mouth. They're not going to let you bully them, and they're going to attack the football with patience. And those things translate.
Yeah, for sure. So when it comes to size, what I'm usually looking for, and you tell me about this especially with Kobe Bryant or the Quincy Riley, whose size is fine. Ideally, you want guys over 200, but like 190, whatever is fine.
Yeah.
But for me, it's not necessarily the press jam, because you can be smaller and still get a piece of somebody. You don't have to beat them in an arm wrestle. You just have to slow them down a little. You can do that if they've got 20 pounds on you. But it's down the field where that starts to get a little dicey, and how grabby do they become? And when you get physicality, like walling at the top of a route stem and you're 10 yards downfield and you're trying to do what you can while like not drawing the flag, like get away with what you can, I feel like a smaller guy has to put more of his body in you to get that like disruption of rhythm that you're looking for down the field. And then it's going to be more obvious and you're going to be a more penalized corner. So I guess the question about both of those guys is, how do they do down, like in particular, we're talking off man coverage or even off zone coverage that turns matchy, like you're 10 yards down the field and you have to knock a guy off of his route stem. How do they do at that?
They're fine. Riley specifically will just stay patient. He will mirror. He will wait for you. Like, I love the Mighty Ducks series. Coach O'Ryan always told Charlie Conway, trying to teach him to play defense, make him make the first move. Riley will keep his feet soft, settle down, wait for you to make the move, and then he will capitalize on it. He does not let you bully him. He does not let you trick him at the stem, and he will follow you and then be able to attack the football, get his head turned around. Brian is a little bit more aggressive. I think he's going to be the one that has a little bit more of the grab issues than Riley, but I don't think it's not like a Xavier Rhodes situation where you got to put boxing gloves on him for 2 weeks in practice. I think it's just going to be a little bit of a transition, because
a lot of college corners have that.
Yeah.
And we've seen plenty of instances of college corners, like a Caleb Evans was one of the grabbiest in college I've like ever seen. Never really was a thing in the NFL for him. Again, like his issues were elsewhere. Okay, I want to follow that up. So is this a catch technique guy or not, Quincy Riley? Sounds like not. Sounds like he does not want to plant his feet and like take your contact, but rather open his hips. Like if it's a go route coming right through him, he'll open his hips and run with that.
Yeah, he'll open his hips with like outside leverage, and then he'll wait for you to make the move, and then he'll just keep his eyes right on you and watch what you do. And by doing
It's
that,
a dangerous way to live.
It is, but it doesn't really impact him. Like, and maybe it's because some of these receivers in the ACC just aren't capable enough of being able to manipulate that. I think pro corners will start to do that, and then he'll have to
It's
find a
just
way to
risky.
adapt.
Like, it's not bad. It's
Yeah.
honestly like some people might be really relieved at that because we've all watched all over the league, too much coverage, guys just letting things get caught in front of them. Yeah, what about the
Mhm.
guy that takes a little bit of risk and says, "Yeah, okay, go ahead, burn me." Like, do
He
it. And
yeah,
it's not going to be a go every time.
he's got
Um
13 interceptions and 34 passes deflected. Like, and 19 of those came in the last 2 years. Like, this dude
hmm.
can play ball.
I want to get outside of the secondary too and ask for a few more of these lovely Valentine's Day matches. Plus, Tyler has a scorching hot take, and I want to just shine a big old black light on it. So we're gonna do that next on Locked On Vikings. Today's Locked On Vikings episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, and when NBA action tips off, there is no better place to get in on it than at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can throw together some ridiculous parlay, whatever it is. You can find it all at FanDuel. Their live betting feature makes it super easy to make those sorts of decisions in real time with live updating stats and metrics and play-by-play of the game that you're looking at. So right now, FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Moving right along here with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Tyler, tell me about some content you just did. Plug.
Yeah, I host the Real Forno show on Vikings First and Goal. I also write for A to Z Sports. I just released the 3-round mock draft yesterday, where I had the Vikings making one pick, and guess what? It's a Georgia safety, and you shouldn't freak out. It's a good pick.
It's not
and
the Georgia safety, is it?
It's Malachi Starks. He's nothing.
I thought he was
like
going
Lewis.
like top 10.
He's got the ability to go top 10, but safeties always fall. And like Daniel Jeremiah had him 36th on his big board, which I was like, what? Like, this guy is like Minka Fitzpatrick level good. And you just put him in a defense and let him play football. Like, this dude was playing outside corner at Georgia at times. Like, like Georgia safety, just don't be scared. It's okay. And then every Monday and Wednesday, Real Forno show, fun stuff.
Excellent. Let's do some more matchmaking. So I've got those two corners written down. But what about elsewhere on the field? Trenches. Give me some trenches. The world wants trenches. The people, they want some beef. They want meat.
Oh, I've had a lot of fun watching trenches in this class. 41 defensive tackles were brought to the combine, Luke. 41. An absurd.
And what's a normal number?
Like 25.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
Yeah. This is a loaded class. I haven't gotten through a ton of them, just kind of glancing over at my big board, which I do have pinned on my Twitter profile because, hey, you can take a look at it as I build it. One guy that I'm absolutely obsessed with, if he doesn't test like a nuclear athlete, which I think he will, I think he could be available 24, and the Vikings should take him no matter what. And this kind of gets into that take a little bit, but it's also not. It's Shamar Stewart, edge rusher from Texas A&M, but he's
yeah, let's talk about it. Everybody's so into this guy. Yes.
He is 6'5", 281 with a jetpack.
Can he cover?
I'm going to be honest. I've only seen a couple coverage reps. I won't be able to give you a straight answer on that.
Then I'm doing the buzzer, not a match. Next.
He's a good enough athlete to be able to drop into coverage about as often as you want Jonathan Grenard dropping into coverage, but you can kick him inside and he will thrive. Like
that's what you would do. Yeah. You Jerry Tillery him and have him rush like guards all day. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, he'd be so good at that. On the, like, this guy is going to have a Trevon Walker like ascension. And I think he'll probably end up my number 1 overall player if Travis Hunter doesn't take him over. This dude's incredible. He can do everything. He can beat you around the bend. He can, he's not going to be the bendiest guy in the world because he's 6'5", 281, but he's got real bend to him. He's not a plank. He can beat you with power. He can beat you with finesse. He can do everything. This guy is just an absolute freakazoid. And the burst he has, like when he recognizes a screen, he will cross the field faster than most linebackers. This dude's just amazing. He's incredible. And if he ends up anywhere close to 24, I'd sell the farm for him. He's that good. And when you have a guy like that, like I think he goes top 10. I think he could go top 5 because I expect him to
Damn.
test like an athletic freak at the combine. Like Travon Walker was a 99.9th percentile athlete per relative athletic score. And your mileage may vary in how you like relative athletic score. I think it's a good rubric to have in front of you, but it does not mean everything, especially
It's a
with
thing.
GPS
Yeah,
data.
it's one data point. Yeah.
I think he probably tests in the 99th percentile. He's wild.
So how hot is this take? Because I'm not as up and up. In February, I am not like plugged into where people are on everyone's draft board. So how hot is the take of Shamar Stewart, top 5 player? Is that you? Are you going out on a big limb there, or is everybody calling him? Oh yeah, but he's top 15, and maybe you're just a little higher.
I'd say it's more the latter than the former.
Okay.
A lot of people are going to have this guy like top 10 player. I mean, look, you and I both were obsessed with Trap Robinson last year. I had him at number 4 on my board.
And we were right, and everyone should apologize to us. That's right.
They absolutely should apologize. You know what? Jared Verse is 24 years old. Of course, he's going to be built like a grown ass man. That's okay.
Yeah.
But this dude,
he's also a Braden Fisk merchant. We don't need to overreact to him. We know who the real talent is over there in LA.
Absolutely. It's Shamar Stewart is just built different. He's special. And you don't get guys with that size, with that kind of pass rush profile, that kind of athleticism, and who understand how to win as a pass rusher. You don't have to teach him that much.
So what makes him a match like Vikings? Because let's try to stick to like the theme of the show today. What makes him particularly like what is specific to the Vikings that makes him a fit rather than just, I mean, there are some guys that are just so good they fit everything. But like what about him is like Flores-y?
I think it's the versatility element. You could have him as a base lineman. You could have him play the Jerry Tillery role. Like he's 281, but it's all good weight. He's not like 281 where that guy's got a beer belly. No, like 281. If you're on the inside, that's almost gets light for me because you're gonna have to start eating double teams from Landon Dickerson types. Yeah.
So can he do that? If we're gonna, because if he's not a cover guy, I don't think you're gonna put him at edge and start like rotating Grenard and Van Ginkel out, trying to do that. And the reason, like Grenard can cover, they just have Van Ginkel and Dallas Turner who are better at it, so they were always asking them to do it. But when they did ask Grenard to cover, it was fine.
Yeah.
So if you don't trust him to do that, you want to kick him inside, okay, but now you got to not get washed to Timbuktu by a double. So is that like, how is he there?
There weren't a ton of opportunities where you saw him face double teams, but he's got grown man strength. I think you give him like 5 to 10 pounds of extra muscle where you're not robbing him of all of his athleticism. You get him up to around 290 because he's already at 281 and he's this explosive. I think you can have a guy who can withstand double teams, who can get penetration in the run game, and then you could have him play a wide 9. He could do the Pat Jones role. He could play the Jerry Tillery role. You could have him just, hey, go beat this left tackle's butt. You could ask him to do all of these things, and I think he could do it. I also think he could spot drop if you need him to. They don't ask defensive linemen to do that at Texas A&M. So we don't have a ton
so you have to teach it from scratch, which is that's a cost, right? Like that's a ding. And it's a ding that won't apply to a team that's drafting ahead of the Vikings that doesn't have to teach that extra thing and is therefore going to like value him more highly, which makes it hard for me to like, it makes it hard for me to wrap my head around that as like a fit. It'd be more of like a, wow, this dude fell to us. What an opportunity. Let's find a way. And that sounds like finding a way to me. So let's move to, if you got an O lineman or another D lineman that truly fits what the Vikings are doing.
I'm not convinced the Vikings are going to spend a ton of premium assets on the offensive line. I think they go for one really big swing and they stay pat, but they still try to add guys.
People are going to be mad.
They're going to be mad.
Right. And I think you're right. And I think people are going to be mad.
I am warning them. Look, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has shown us no propensity to want to prioritize the interior offensive line. But the caveat is he has not had a ton of assets to be able to prioritize it and decided, hey, I've got my stud tackles. I have enough capability there.
He could have. So he's had one serious investment, which is a second round pick, and that's Ed Ingram. Otherwise, it's been a cheapo Bradbury deal, a cheapo Brandel deal, and like letting Ezra Cleveland walk, who would have been like, if they extended Cleveland, I would have been like, oh, that's serious. But it feels like a very unserious thing to do,
Mhm.
to like let Ezra Cleveland walk and then just like dink around with, Reisner and Ingram and Brandel and like a 3-way competition between a bunch of guys you don't actually know are good.
Yeah. But he also had $72 million in dead cap. So how much of that is due to the dead cap? How much of it is due to what Kwesi Oppenheimer wants? Look, before Darius got hurt,
spent on the D line, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like they had nothing to do, but they did.
No.
They chose those things over the O line. So I'm with you. Kwesi doesn't like to spend on O line. Is kind of what I'm saying. They have been kind of rattling along with cheapo stuff.
And before Darius got hurt, he was right, and you can't argue against it. He was 100% right. That
line was kicking ass for 8 weeks.
They were. One guy I really like, his name's Clay Webb. He's a guard out of Jacksonville State, probably a day 3 guy. But this is
stepping on Kevin's territory.
I don't care. Kevin can deal with it. But this dude was
shut up, Kevin.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, shut up, Kevin. He was a 5-star recruit at Georgia. Could not get on the field. Transfers to Jacksonville State. 3-time All-Conference. So he's a 6-year guy. So a little older.
Interesting.
But
yeah, that's always alarming when I was a 5-star recruit and I couldn't get on the field, so I went down to like at Jacksonville State. Like, I don't know.
It is a fair thing to talk about, but in this era of college football, sometimes you just want to go play. So he had the redshirt year. There's the COVID year, and then at Georgia, look, you're losing out to 4- and 5-star guys. So sometimes you just don't, there's just not a path for you to get on the field. He goes to Jacksonville State. He's a 3-time All-Conference player, and he goes to the Senior Bowl. I'm like, I really want to know how much of this was just maybe Georgia just didn't like him, or they loved other guys, or this guy just isn't good. Like, what's the deal here? And he went out and held his own. He was really good in Mobile in a lot of those one-on-one drills, and just showed that his performance in the Sun Belt, not the Sun Belt, Conference USA, was not an abnormality. This dude is just a really good football player. He's got legit strength. But I do think, older prospect, there are, I think, some minor athletic limitations. I think that he would be a really nice pick in like round 5, because I think you can make that guy a starter in year 2 or 3 if you want to. Like, he can just play football, and I like that.
So I have some follow-up questions on this before we get to our little edge rusher debate thing we were going to do.
Okay.
But I do have some follow-ups. So we've got a lot more to talk about here on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by PrizePicks. And look, football is over, but basketball's going crazy. NHL is going crazy, and the Combine's coming up as well. And that means that PrizePicks is still very much in full swing. With PrizePicks, all you got to do is pick more or less on your favorite player projections. And if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. So Jason Tatum, more than 29 points. Anthony Edwards, more than 6.5 rebounds. I don't know if that's a normal number, but whatever it is, PrizePicks is quick and easy. You can set your lineup in less than 60 seconds, and they're fast and secure withdrawals, meaning that you can get your winnings in as little as 15 minutes. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, moving on here with the Locked On Vikings podcast here with Tyler Fornes. It's Forno Fridays. We're talking drafts. So Clay Webb, what makes him a Vikings fit? Is this something about zone run? Is this about like schematically, or is this more of because it feels like you're suggesting more like a Kwesi thing where it's, he's older, but that doesn't matter. Or he's from Jacksonville State, but that doesn't matter. Which is very like kind of Kwesi style, more in free agency where we get the guy that's got an injury that's going to sink his value, but not his actual ROI. And we're like hunting for those value plays. So is this a Kwesi match or a Kevin O'Connell match?
I think
it's a Chris Cooper match.
I think it's a Kevin O'Connell match. When they took Ed Ingram in the second round, and we can talk all day about whether Ed Ingram was a hit, whether he's good or bad. None of that matters. But what does matter is
it tells us what they like, what they're going to go for. Yeah.
It tells us what they like. And you know what? I think Clay Webb is a very similar player profile to Ed Ingram. He's got good enough foot speed. He's got good strength. He's not going to get bowled over. But there are some athletic limitations there. And I think those elements will translate 1-to-1 for what they like. And I think he's a good fit in round 5. If he doesn't start, I think he can be a good backup. Plus, I think he has center flexibility, which you're going to need for a guy that's going to
That
be
makes
an
you
interior.
teams.
Yeah.
Yep. It pushes Michael Juergens, basically, is the idea.
And I'm not sold that Juergens is ever going to be an NFL guy. They are. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has said so, that they believe Juergens can be a future starter in the league. But we need to see more to really believe that. So
starter is wild for a 7th rounder. I mean, to me, you bring that guy in, one of those guys gets a roster spot, the other one gets cut, and you're spending draft capital to kind of like ensure competition and cover your bases and give yourself like several good outcomes. So that makes a lot of sense. That they, of course, smaller interior offensive lineman. By small, we mean what's he, like 310, right?
Yeah.
So, on the smaller end for interior linemen, not these like big 330-pound guards, and with a little bit more maneuverability, and then hoping you can kind of sneak into some value on day 3. So that's what you gave me 4 names. That'll work. Let's move on to the take. So you and I were arguing the other day, and I was like, we got to save this for the show, about, I guess, the Vikings prioritization. And what you said was insane to me, and I want to put your feet to the fire about it. But tell me what it was you said about like the Vikings and maybe their first round ideas.
I think they might take edge rusher over defensive tackle, not because
you're talking in the first round.
If it were to come to brass tacks, yes. I will preface this because I do realize it sounds a little insane.
Yeah, but, and now walk it back to wherever you want to walk it back to, and I'll approach you there.
This is the context that I gave at the time. Free agency can completely derail this or change.
Of course. Yeah.
But this is where I'm at right now. The Vikings don't really care about a pass rushing defensive tackle, or they haven't shown a true want to get one. They did try for Christian Wilkins. How hard did they try? We don't know. We just know that they made an offer. Outside of that, they did not prioritize it last year. They did not prioritize it the year before. And Brian Flores' love for like the amoeba defense, which he was doing in Miami, where everybody was standing up, and the NASCAR package with 4 edge rushers. Are we sure that they want a pass rushing defensive tackle? Not because we don't think they should, but because of how they are thinking. That's where my mind is trying to go. How are they going to think about this? And you're losing Pat Jones, you're losing Jihad Ward, and one of those guys might come back, probably Ward, probably not Jones, because I think Jones is probably going to get a DJ Wanamaker contract where he's going to get 6 to 8 million somewhere, and good for him. But
for sure. Yeah, I think he's definitely not going to be, like, I don't see a world where he's part of the Vikings' future plans. Yeah.
But edge 3 on this team will play 50% of the snaps. And if this guy is edge 3 now or edge 3 next year, 50% of the snaps is completely fine. Plus, if you have a lot of growth from him and Dallas Turner, maybe you start taking like Grenard and Van Ginkel off for like maybe like an extra 5 snaps a game to keep their legs fresher for the end of the season. Because that's 75 snaps. That is a significant drop over the course of a year. But in one game, it's probably not that discernible of a difference. Edge 3 this year was Jihad Ward, played 42.5% of the snaps at 505 out of 1,188. Pat Jones played 452, but he was also hurt for essentially 3 full games. So if you extrapolate kind of like on a per snap basis, he's probably playing about 520, 530 snaps. So you have your edge 3 and 4 playing a total of almost 1,000 snaps. That is like a fringe starting position, because when you look at the defensive linemen, Harrison Phillips played 701. You had Jerry Tillery, he played under 500. You had Jonathan Bullard, he played like 550. And then Jalen Redmond, your D tackle 4, is playing 236. Your edge 5 for the Vikings was Dallas Turner, who played 310. So edge 3 and 4 are viewed in a higher value for this style of defense than a defensive tackle. And until they show me that they really want to prioritize that pass rusher, then maybe that edge guy, with how deep the edge class is, because DT is also deep, they might want to take an edge rusher, because then they'll have a succession plan for Van Ginkel, and they also have Jonathan Grenard, they have Dallas Turner, and now you have 3 edge rushers for a defense that needs like 4 or 5 to play consistent snaps. Is it the best use of resources? I think you can make an easy argument, Luke, that it's not, and I know you're going to. But
and that's not what I'm going to argue. No, I'm going to argue that I think your assessment of the Vikings' needs is narrowed a little, because losing Pat Jones and losing Jihad Ward, sure, that represents some number of snaps, but Jerry Tillery is leaving, Jonathan Bullard is leaving as well, and that's the second and third guy on the depth chart versus the having to replace, and I'll even say the fourth and fifth guy on the depth chart, because I think by the end of the season, Dallas Turner had taken that third job and projects to have it in the future. He didn't have it the first month of the season, but guess what? It's not the first month of the season anymore. Yeah. Things change. So yeah, I think with Van Ginkel, who is in a contract year next year, it's very clear to me that Dallas Turner is meant to be the next Van Ginkel, the succession. He is the succession plan to Van Ginkel. So you're talking about getting a succession plan to Dallas Turner or a succession plan to Pat Jones with a first round pick. I think whether it was interesting because whether it's Bullard or Tillery became a formation based and like an offensive personnel based decision, which makes both of those guys vital pieces. If you neglect your Jerry Tillery or your Jonathan Bullard, then other teams will be like, oh, that dude sucks. Let's put him on. Remember back in 2017 when the only way anybody moved the ball ever was to get into a base package so Ben Gedeon was on the field and then they could do something about him. They could throw at him. That's the move, right? And you don't want to give offenses a really easy way, which is why all this versatility, which is why like everyone rotates in so much, and it's why everybody gets so much play. So like, while everyone does get in, and I do think that means that the Vikings have to be, I'll call it serious. They have to be serious about the guy, the kind of second teamers and third teamers in this room. And they probably need 9 or 10 guys on the defensive line if we're counting the outside linebackers as D-line, which I always do. But I think as a first round need, the argument that you've made is more compelling that defensive tackle isn't, but it's not very compelling to me that edge rusher actually is, because a 500 snap guy that doesn't ever really have a future to usurp Jonathan Grenard, unless you're giving up on Dallas Turner, which is a totally different take.
Which I'm not, but I have an amendment to that, but I'll let you finish.
Yeah. If you're spending a first round pick on an edge rusher, and we're talking like, when I'm saying edge rusher, I'm thinking like a halfway cover, like a 3-4 outside linebacker who drops into coverage, who rushes off the edge, who, maybe kicks inside on third downs in like NASCAR packages, but not Shamar Stewart. Shermar Stewart. To me, on the Vikings, that guy would be an inside guy. So I'm talking about like a versatile, like a chess piece player, right, on the outside. If you do that, that guy needs to have my question would be, okay, what's the long-term vision for him becoming a cornerstone to your defense? And it can't be, well, he'll just be the Pat Jones forever. Yeah. That to me is a fourth rounder. Get a fourth rounder for your Pat Jones, right? For your DJ Wanhams. And so maybe that's an argument that D-line at all is not really a first round need and should probably be addressed in free agency, where you have an abundance of guys that you can give $3 million to and they can come in and be Jihad Ward. Yeah. So, which I think is what's going to happen and make this whole thing kind of moot. But yeah.
I think one of the big things about this take is you have to be able to fill a lot of these needs early on in free agency. I think the secondary is going to be in a place where you don't have to spend high draft capital. You probably should, but I think they're going to be in a position where they don't have to once free
spend a lot of money
is
there.
Done. Yeah, I think they're going to spend a ton of money. This is going to be the edge rusher of 2024. They're going to spend a lot on the secondary.
God, please, for once.
Yes, and just be the
atrophy
right guy.
For like a decade. It's insane.
It's like Waswa Sarwanga and Kenny Wright all over again, except guys who are a little bit better. But one of my big takes with the edge rushers, I kind of do have a plan, and my theory is especially because we've seen how good Dallas Turner's dropping into coverage, how good he is moving in space, that he's going to be less of an edge rusher long-term than we believe he's going to be, and he's going to play a little bit more off the ball.
Are we blaming him? That'd be insane to me.
I think
That's a
we might,
lot, man.
I think we might be like Dante Hightowering him, where
Okay.
you're gonna do some off the ball stuff. You're gonna have him mug A gaps. You're gonna have him
So
be more of
like a role specifically for him.
yes,
That once Dallas Turner departs, you don't replace it. Almost like Anthony Barr was in Minnesota in Mike Zimmer's defenses, where like when Barr left, you didn't go get your next Barr. They did a different thing with Jordan Hicks.
Yeah, I think Turner's going to be used more as a versatile chess piece than a traditional edge rusher, which then theoretically opens up edge 2 for a long-term need, because you're going to have Dallas Turner as like the amoeba. He's going to be this guy that does a little bit of everything for you. He's going to play some edge. He's going to play some off ball. He's going to play coverage. He's going to mug A gaps. He's going to do a lot of different things, because I think they view him as that kind of special player where he can do all of that stuff. And if you have him play a bunch off ball, now I think we can argue whether that's a good or bad idea. This is just kind of what my vision is and what I think that they might do with him, because all we heard last offseason was this guy's like Dante Hightower. So why would they not use him like Dante Hightower? Like, he had a ton of coverage snaps last year. I don't think that's a mistake. And
no, it's his strength for sure.
I think that gives you flexibility with another edge rusher to do even more with Dallas Turner, and as he grows older, because he's only 22, you can put a little bit more on his plate each year, and then he can grow and develop into that kind of uber specific role for him, where I kind of like, it's like a souped up Andrew Van Ginkel, where Van Ginkel is a very good football player, but he does not have the athletic gifts that Dallas Turner has. He does not have the length and size that Dallas Turner has. And if you can get Dallas Turner to do a lot of those Dante Hightower things while being an explosive edge rusher, that gives you a special kind of flexibility to really elevate what this defense is.
That's probably the vision of drafting him in the first place.
Yes.
And also something that definitely was never going to show up week 1. Tyler, thank you so much for hanging out. Next Friday, same time, same place.
I can't wait. Hey, and the best part is, when this show comes out next Friday, I'll be on a plane to Cancun.
Oh, very nice. Just like the Chicago Bears will be around January 14th next year. All right. I will talk to you next week. I will see everybody else on Monday. Thank you all so much for watching. And as always, Skull.